Hello, everyone. We are ready to get started. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Morris, and I'm with MadCap Software. And today I am so excited to introduce Eloise Lewis, Senior Technical Author at JHC Systems in the UK. Now, JHC has offices in London, Newcastle, and Birmingham. And Eloise is joining us today from Birmingham today. So thank you, Eloise, for taking the time. And today, Eloise is going to share tips and methods to help make your content more interactive and also how to provide more guidance through complex tasks by using interactive wizards in Flare. So she's going to explore different scenarios and how they can be used, how they can be configured in Flare so that you too can transform your static content into a dynamic, user-led story. This webinar is actually adapted from her presentation that she did at MadWorld Europe this year in Prague. So Eloise, welcome once again. We are so happy to have you present today. I'm excited to see this since you and I presented at the same time and I didn't get to sit in on your presentation. So we have a lot to cover today. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items that we always like to cover before we begin. Reminder, this will be recorded. So at the end of the session, we'll be compiling the recording and sending it out to everybody who's registered. Also, there will be a questions panel that you'll have access to, or a chat panel there in the GoToWebinar console. And so feel free, if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, jot them down. We're going to get to as many as we can and follow up. If there's any that we didn't get to, we'll certainly follow up after the webinar. So that's pretty much it. Again, welcome, Eloise. We're happy to have you today. I know you have a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Jen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. By the end of the webinar, you're going to have everything you need to start creating your own interactive wizards in Flare. What do I mean when I talk about wizards? Well, it's a fairly generic term used to describe anywhere that you take something complex and break it down into bite-sized chunks so that users can be taken through that step by step. You see wizards all over the place. I've got some examples to show you. So one that might be familiar to you is a Windows one. So if you want to add a printer, this is their Add Printer wizard that takes you step by step how to do that. And you may have noticed in Flare, when you click on the New Project button, it starts the New Project wizard. Now, those examples are quite kind of classic wizard examples. They're flagged up as such in the user interface. But in day-to-day life, we see wizards all over the place. So you may have noticed when you start a new app for the first time, you may go through a few screens on startup just to get it all set up right for you to make sure you know how to use it. This example is one from Apple Music, and that's a wizard. You also see them on websites. So say you want to open up a new savings account, you might go onto your banking website and they may have a few questions for you. So things like who you are, how much you want to save every month, whether you need instant access to your cash, things like that. And at the end of that series of questions, you see a list of accounts that are suitable for you and your needs. Well, that's a wizard as well. So they're all over the place and they're a really nice thing to add into your user assistance site. First up, they're an interactive element, so it really helps users kind of engage with your content and kind of feel like they are interacting with it. And because you can essentially ask your users questions, you can work out what their particular scenario is, what kind of task they're trying to complete. And that means that you can give them really targeted assistance. And that can make your user assistants feel really supportive because you're giving users exactly the help they need. You can use wizards for things like troubleshooting issues. You can use them to take users through a complex process one step at a time. And you can also use them for things like finding the right tool for them given their situation. So they're really versatile, and they can really kind of allow you to give that very targeted supportive help. Saying that, they aren't always suited to everything, and it's worth bearing in mind that you probably have sort of different users with different needs. So whilst a wizard may be perfect for maybe a new user or somebody who's not that confident, you may have really experienced users that know exactly where in your help site they need to be, exactly what page they need to be on and where to find help, and they won't necessarily want to work through a whole bunch of questions to get to that. You also need to think about things like search results, so a lot of the content within the wizard is hidden behind those questions. So if a user enters search terms, if they open up their wizard topic, they may not see those terms immediately, and that could be a confusing experience for them. I will be coming back to that later in the webinar to talk to you about how we kind of manage writing for those different scenarios and different users. So when I was accepted to give this presentation at MadWorld Europe, I knew straight away that I would want to present an example wizard that I'd created in Flare so that everybody could see what I was talking about. And then the way that the session works is that I then take you step by step through each of the steps I took to make that wizard. My first challenge then was working out what to use for the example wizard. We've got a few wizards in our user assistance site that I could have used, but they're all really quite niche to the financial services industry, so they're not necessarily the most relatable content. I thought about doing something much more generic and much more familiar, so say something like a Wi-Fi troubleshooting wizard, but the session that I got as part of MadWorld was right at the end of the 2 days of main conference. So I was aware that people have had a lot to take in, and that Wi-Fi troubleshooting maybe isn't the most exciting topic to talk about. So who remembers Choose Your Own Adventure stories? Well, a few of you might. For anybody that isn't familiar with them, they were a series of children's books published in the 80s and 90s. And the way the books worked was you'd get a few pages of story with the reader as the protagonist. And then after that start, you'd get some options, and it would say something like, to pursue the smugglers, turn to page 76, or you call the police, turn to page 23, so that you could literally choose your own adventure. Well, it turns out that Choose Your Own Adventure stories are really well suited to being presented in a wizard. So that's the example wizard that I will show you today, and that's what we'll be creating as part of this webinar. I'm just going to switch over to the wizard now. Okay, so this is the example wizard that I've built in Flare. I've built this using a sample project that you'll all have access to. And let's run through it now. So our story is called A Meeting of Monsters. They're here. Oh God, they found you. What do you do? Run or hide? So I'm going to need a little bit of audience participation for this one. A poll is going to open up on your screen where you can choose what you want to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, are we going to run or are we going to hide? Okay, the votes are coming in. Let's give it a couple more moments. Okay, I think we've got a clear winner for this one. So we are going to run. Their vision is based on movement. They give chase. Should we keep running or give in? You'll get another poll opening now, so you can make your choice. Oh wow, clear winner for this one. We'll just let a few more votes come in and then we will continue with the story. Okay, I think that's ready. We are going to keep running. They're fast, too fast. They're catching up. Do you want to turn and fight or keep running some more? You'll get a poll to place your votes now. Okay, I think we've got a clear winner for this one. So we are a brave bunch today. We're going to turn and fight. It hurts. You fool. They quickly overpower you. Your end is neither swift nor dignified. Don't worry, all the other endings are similarly gruesome. So if I just start the wizard again, I will take you through a few of the key features. So one thing you might have noticed is that this is just another page in our Flare generated output. I've used one of the template projects that is available with Flare to create this. You can see we've got the sort of placeholder for the logo there. And because it's just another page in the output, it means that you've got all of your normal features and styling that users are used to. So you've got things like your top nav menu, the nice prominent search bar, things like the mini menu over on the right. And that means that it's really nice for your users because they're in really familiar territory. Everything looks the same, they're really well grounded, they can navigate as they're used to. So it's kind of keeping in with that theme of making sure it's a really supportive environment. Onto the wizard itself. We've got the kind of interactive element with a bit of background shading on there. Now, all of the styling is done within Flare, so you can make this look exactly how you want. If you don't want that shading on there, you can take it off. We've got it on there just to kind of flag up which bit will be dynamic, but it's entirely up to you. We've got our question and then we've got our option buttons here, and you can see as I hover over them, they're styled to look like buttons so that it really indicates to the user that that's a clickable element. If I click on that one, then as soon as I go past question 1, another couple of buttons appear. The first of those is a back button, and in our story, this is the equivalent of leaving your finger in the page you are on, just in case you don't quite like the way your adventure is going. And for user assistance sites, that's also quite important because all of the content for the wizard is within one page, one topic in our Flare project. So if users try and use their browser back button to go back, they'll actually go to whichever page or website they were on before. So it's quite important to include that button for navigation. We've also got a Start Again button, which means that it's really easy to switch straight back to question 1 and start the wizard again. In our case, that means we can choose a new adventure. So that is how the wizard looks. And like I say, the kind of format of the webinar today will be me showing you how I have created that. So if I just go back to the presentation. The first step in creating a wizard is to actually create a flowchart. Now, this is where you're going to do most of your kind of thinking, most of the work, because your flowchart is where you map out all of the questions you want to ask, all of the steps in your wizard, and the kind of the help items you want to present to your users, and the paths through that. The great news is that if you can create a flowchart for something, you can pretty much create a wizard for it as well. Now, we've got a few guidelines around that at JHC just to make it certain that the flowchart will be suited to a wizard presentation. They are guidelines, they're not hard and fast rules at all. You may come up with your own kind of way to do this, but I thought it might be useful to share these with you. The first one is to stick to 3 options maximum. So those are the little buttons you can click on. In our case, we have things like run and hide. And the reason I suggest sticking to a maximum of 3 is partly cosmetic, in that if you have more than that, then the buttons will go onto a new line, so it doesn't look quite as neat. Just as a note, the project is styled responsively, so if you're on, say, a mobile device, then they stack on top of each other nicely. And the other reason I suggest that is a kind of usability thing, in that the whole point of your wizard is to break this complex thing down into really manageable steps. And if you're kind of presenting users with, say, 5 or 6 options, it might not feel as simple as it could be a little bit overwhelming for them. So that's the first guideline. The next one is to keep options short, and that means the label that's on the button, for example, run. And this one is purely cosmetic. It's just so that the button text displays nicely on that styled button. And one thing to bear in mind with that is if you are translating your project into different languages, you may find that the translated phrase is a bit longer than the phrase in the original language. So it's something that you may want to note to check on those translations. And then the third guideline is to avoid yes/no answers. And this is a usability thing, and it's kind of a personal preference of mine. Like I say, these aren't hard and fast rules at all. But a really nice example of this is, say, in Word, if you're trying to close a document that's got unsaved changes, and you get a little warning box pop up. Now, years ago, that used to have options like yes and no, and so it wasn't really that clear whether you were clicking yes to save the changes or yes to exit without saving. You actually had to read the text in the dialog box quite carefully to know which way that was phrased. Whereas now, you see they've got buttons that say save, don't save, and cancel. So it's really obvious straight away to the user what the consequence of that click is going to be. And we can work that same kind of usability into our wizards. So when we're creating our flowchart, we start off with this template flowchart. And you can see that we've got our starting point here on the left, and then each of our questions, each of our steps is in one of these decision boxes. We've got our options coming out of that with yes/no placeholder text on for the moment. And then over here, these are our help items, or in the case of our story, our endings. Now, you'll notice there are some labels on the flowchart, and I will be referring back to these quite a bit through the session. They're there to make it really easy to write and also to maintain the wizard within Flare. You can end up with quite a lot of content within one topic. So it just means that if you or a colleague, say, needs to go back to your wizard in 6 months' time and make a change to one of the steps, it's really easy to find out which step you need to change and where in the topic that is. And the labels help with all sorts of other things as well. So we've got our questions labelled kind of like chapters, so you can see the labels here, and then our help items are labelled just with A, B, C, etc. So we'll start off with the template flowchart and think about what we want to present in our wizard and come up with something like this. This is the flowchart for the Choose Your Own Adventure wizard. And you can see I've written in the questions and the options, and I've kept the labelling there. And that labelling and the flowchart are kind of, they stick with the wizard throughout its life cycle. So they're always kind of there as a reference point. Now, the question labels, whilst they're very helpful to us as writers because they are unique and they show the kind of the sequence of them, they're not the most user-friendly labels. Question 1.2.1 doesn't really mean much to a user, and it can make it look almost more complex than it needs to. So we present the questions to users as simply question 1, question 2, question 3. And the structure of the flowchart and the labels that we've got in place help it make it really obvious which ones are which. So you can see here, if say it's in column 2, it's question 2, and those will all have 2 digits in the label. That's our flowchart sorted, but we don't have a wizard yet. So how do we do that? Well, no prizes for guessing that that is within Flare. So I'm just going to switch over to Flare now. This is a copy of the sample project that you'll all have access to. Like I say, it's created using one of the template projects that's available in Flare. I've just added in this extra folder here called Wizard Topics. And the first one I'm going to open up is Wizard Help. And this is written instructions for creating wizards. So it's basically everything I'll be talking about today. So you've got it there for reference. You can see step 1 is create your flowchart, which we've already been through. We've got the kind of the guidelines that I mentioned there, and you've got an image of the template flowchart that we start with, and also the example of a completed flowchart. So that's all done. The next step then is to prepare your wizard topic, and there is a template topic in the project for that. So you'd kind of copy that. I'm just going to work straight in it because this is just a copy of the project for today. And you can see straight away that we have got a little bit of conditioning on there. The topic as a whole is conditioned to just show in online outputs. That's because the sample project that this is using is set up so that it will generate both online and PDF. But the wizard won't really work very nicely in PDF outputs, so we're just showing it in our online builds. And that's another reason why you might want to think about how much content you're actually putting in your wizard. The other conditioning we've got is on our labels. So these are conditioned with a hidden label, and that's so that we can keep our labels that we've got on our flowchart in the topic, so we've got those to refer to when we're writing, but they're not shown to end users, they just see, say, question 2. Now, the first step, once you've kind of copied the template topic, is to prepare it so that it matches with your flowchart. So at the moment, this is based on the template flowchart. It's got kind of the same number of placeholder questions and help items in there, but you might have a different number or a different structure in your actual flowchart. So you just need to go through and make sure that the topic matches up with that. I find that the easiest place to do that is within the text editor, so I'm just going to switch into that now. And you can see a little bit behind the scenes here how the wizard is actually working. So we've got a wrapper for the wizard as the whole, and that's kind of all that shaded item that you saw on the page. And then each of our questions is in a unique ID div section. And the ID is our question label from the flowchart. And each section has got some buttons, and we've got an action on those buttons so that it says basically when the user clicks on the button to toggle one of the other sections on. So it all works with kind of showing and hiding content, and there's a little bit of JavaScript behind the scenes that actually does the work toggling the different sections off and on. So that's how it kind of fits together. Like I say, our prep step is to make sure that we've got the right number of questions and help items and that they're in the right structure to match up with our flowchart. So if I just switch back to the flowcharts, if I show you in here, you can see that in our template flowchart, we've got 5 questions. And in our actual flowchart, we've also got 5, but they are in slightly different positions. So instead of having a question up here, we've got one down here. So I'm just going to move one of those placeholder questions in our topic down so that it follows on from question 1.2. So we don't have a 1.1.2. So I'm just going to cut that. And then after 1.2, I'm going to paste that in underneath. And because that question's in a different position, it's going to have a different label. So I'm going to update this. And because it's following on from 1.2, I know that it's going to be 1.2.1. And you can see that from the flowchart as well. If you like seeing things visually, you can see straight away exactly what label that question should have. I've updated the ID of the div section there. I'm also going to update the label that you see in the XML editor so that that is in line as well. And the other label you need to check is the question number that the users see. Now, because I've copied a question 3 to a question 3, this is correct, but you can always check that against your flowchart and against the number of digits that you've got in the label. So in this case, that 3 is fine. That's the prep for the questions. You need to do the same thing for your help items. So if I pop back to the flowchart, you can see our template goes up to F, but we've actually got an ending G as well. So back in my topic, I'm just going to copy one of those placeholder items and paste it in. And again, update the labels. So the ID is G for this one, and we want to be able to see that that is G when we're writing. So I'm just going to save that, and that's our first bit of prep work done. The next step, if I go back up to the top, is to relabel our question buttons. So at the moment, we've just got some placeholder text in there for yes and no. We want to actually go through and put in the proper button labels. So we know for our first question, our options are run and hide. So I'm just going to pop that in now. And at the same time, you want to make sure that those are going to the right place. So the toggle instruction says which div ID to show once the user clicks on that button. And you just check those against your flowchart. So run goes to 1.1 and hide goes to 1.2. And we can see that's all set up okay here. For question 1.1, our options are either keep running or give in. So I'm going to relabel those. And again, I'm going to check where those go. And because we've changed the structure a little bit from the template flowchart, we are going to need to make some changes. So keep running goes to 1.1.1 and give in goes straight to ending C. So all I need to do is check these. So keep running is fine, that's still pointing to 1.1.1. And all I need to do for the give in option is change this to point to ending C. And so I won't do all of them today, but that's kind of what you do. You'd go through each of your questions and update the buttons accordingly. You need to do the same thing for the navigation buttons. So your back button, to make sure that it's going back to the right previous question. Start again should always be all right, because that's always going back to question 1. So if I take a look at that question I moved earlier, my back button here is going to question 1.1. We can see straight away from the label that that's not right. It should be going back to 1.2. So you can just update that there. And you can always check that against your flowchart as well. We can see 1.2.1 is going back to 1.2. So you just go through the wizard topic as a whole and just make sure everything's pointing to the right place. So I'm just going to save that. Now, once that's done, you can start putting your content in. I switch back to the XML editor for this because it's a little bit easier. And all you need to do is just replace that placeholder text with your own text. So if I check back on my flowchart, my first question is, they're here, oh God, they found you. Now, the template topic itself is quite simple insofar as these questions go, but you don't have to be limited by it at all. It's just another Flare topic, so you've got all of your kind of normal Flare tools available to you. If you want to add in some extra text, you can just hit enter there. I'll just pop some example text in, but you can really go to town. You can add in lists, tables, images, you can use snippets, all the kind of stuff that you're used to using within Flare. So you can add in as much content as you like. So you might want to add in some help to help users choose the right option for them. You might be using your wizard to kind of take people step by step through a process, in which case you can add instructions for the current step. So it's really flexible, and you can really kind of get it to suit whatever it is you're presenting. So once I've done that, I can save it. And what's really nice about it just being another Flare topic is that things like the preview works. So you don't even have to build your project to be able to check it's all working and test it. You can see if I click on the button here, it takes me to the next question along. So what I'll often do is I'll say print out my flowchart, or I'll have it on the second monitor, and just kind of run through each of the paths just to make sure that I've relabeled those buttons correctly, that they're all pointing to the right place, that kind of thing. So that's your wizard written. You're all done. What I want to talk to you about now is just a little bit more about the kind of behind the scenes stuff, so that you know kind of everything you need to be in place in order for your wizard to work. And this is going to be really useful if, say, you want to copy the wizard items from the sample project over to your own existing projects that have got all of your content, all of your styling in. This is kind of your checklist of all the bits that you need to copy over. So the first thing is the JavaScript that I mentioned. That's just in the JS folder here, and that just sits there and does the hard work of toggling that content on and off. So you need that in place. The next one is the conditions, which I've already mentioned, that are in that topic. So the online condition was already in that template project, but I did add in that hidden condition to hide those labels. You may have conditions in place already that will do the same work, and there's nothing special about them. They don't need to be in a separate condition set or anything. They're just standard conditions. Next up is the styling, and that is all just in the main style sheet, which is again part of the template project. So I'm just going to open that up now. So all of this main styling I haven't actually touched at all. There is just an extra bit of styling at the end, which I've added a comment for, which is specific to the wizard. The first bit is that wizard container, the bit with the kind of the light grey shading on. Like I say, if you don't want that on there, you can take it off, you can change the colour, make it look how you want it to look. And then we've got the buttons. So this is the kind of the main option button. You can see it's got, that's the kind of the green colour, that's the accent colour of the template project. But you can change that however you like. In our user assistance, our buttons are bright blue because that's our accent colour, and that's got white text on to make that really stand out. So you are free to kind of style it how you want. Now there's a variation on the wizard button, which is called Whiz button long, and this is just something that may come in handy if, for example, you've only got 2 options for a particular question and you want to have a little bit more space to play with for that button label. Because you've only got 2 buttons, you've got a little bit more width to play with on your page. So the buttons themselves are a little bit longer and they've got a little bit less padding on as well, just so that you can fit on a few extra characters. And I can show you those working now. So if I pop back in here, say we wanted to embellish our story a little bit, and instead of just saying run and hide, we want to say run fast, really fast. And we're going to hide in the nearby bushes. Well, if I save that and then have a look at that, you can see straight away, because I've got a slightly longer button label, it's pushed this button onto 2 lines. So now it's looking a little bit messy. In addition to that, if I hover over this one, because I've got that affordance on the button to make sure it looks like a clickable element, it's shifting the text across and displaying those little chevrons. So now that one's on 2 lines as well. So overall, it's just looking a little bit messy. But I've only got 2 options there. So I can update my button here and just change the class to that long variation. Just pop those in now and save that. And now if I preview it, you can see it's looking nice and neat again, and when I hover over, I've got enough space for that text to display still on 1 line. So that's just something that might come in handy if you do want a little bit more text on your buttons. The third button style is for the navigation buttons. So we style those as kind of smaller buttons that are black, just to make it clear that they're not options. Again, you can play with the styling on those and make them look how you want them to look. Next bit of styling, this is all for the button text to make it shift on hover and display those little chevrons. And then the last little bit here is the side content wizard. Now, div.side content is an existing style in the template project, and it's the styling that is on this these side elements here. So the little toolbar buttons and the mini menu on the right. Now, the reason I've got a wizard variation for that is just to add in that bit of white space between the shading on the wizard and the colour of the menu. Now, if you don't have shading on your wizard, or you prefer how it looks when those colours meet right up, then you won't need this bit of styling in. I've included it just because it might come in handy, and that links in with the master page. So this wizard topic uses the standard master page for this project, which is just called Other Topics. So if I open that up, then you can see in the original project, this has got a div class here of side content. So I've just updated that to use the wizard variant, which has got that border between the 2 background colours. The last bit of the style sheet that I want to mention is this bit, which is for use with image buttons. And this is a really nice variation if you've got, say, quite a visual product. Rather than having just text buttons, you can have images. So an example of where this might come in handy is back to our Wi-Fi troubleshooting. There may be different versions of routers out there, and part of the troubleshooting is to look at what lights are on and off and things like that. Well, I don't know what version of a router I have, but I can totally match up an image in the help with a box that's sitting on my shelf and click on the right one for me. So I've got an example of that in the sample project. It's here, so you can see I've got images for run and for hide, and those are actually illustrations from the original Choose Your Own Adventure stories, and you can just click on the one that's right for you. So you can see straight away that's a clickable thing. My cursor's changed and that takes you to the next question, just like our text buttons did. So that's a kind of rundown of the styling. Back to our behind the scenes topic, I've mentioned that updated master page, which has got the border between those two elements. And then finally, just the wizard template topic itself, and just a little note there that if your file structure in your own project is a little bit different, you might just need to check that all those references off to things like the JavaScript and the style sheet all work and are updated to match your folder structure. So if I just pop back to my presentation and resume that, I just wanted to run through the resources that are available to you in that sample project. So you've got the template wizard topic, which is the one that we've been working in today. And you've got the two example wizards, the kind of finished items that you can refer back to. So you've got the one that we went through at the start of the session with the text buttons, and the one that I've just shown you that's got those image buttons in as well. There's the instructions that I showed you, so you've got those to refer back to if you do need a little bit of a reminder about how to do things. It's got kind of notes in about the labelings, which bits you need to update, things like that, so they're quite handy. And then you've got that behind the scenes topic, which is your checklist of things to copy over, all the elements that you need in place for the wizard to work. As promised, there is the download link for the sample project, so you can download that, and straight away you've got a little sandpit you can play with, start experimenting with wizards, play with styling, all of that kind of thing. Lastly, from me, I cannot take full credit for the Choose Your Own Adventure story. That's adapted from a Twitter Choose Your Own Adventure story created by Terence Eden. He is at Edent, and if you want to play through the original story, which is a lot more detailed than mine is, you can go to @WND_go and choose your own adventure. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that has been useful and you're buzzing with ideas for wizards that you want to start creating. I'm going to hand you back to Jen now, who is going to talk to you about MadWorld.
Wonderful. Thank you, Eloise. We some fun questions coming in. So if you're still on the line and if you're wondering about something, feel free to jot them in there. We're going to get to some of these that have come in just a moment. But I want to remind everybody that it's that time of year again where we have MadWorld coming up in 2019. San Diego is quickly approaching. It'll be the 14th through the 17th. Here in sunny San Diego, back at the Hard Rock Hotel. There is a early registration discount that's expiring December 31st. So if you're interested in coming, encourage you to sign up and register because it's a wonderful savings through the end of the year. And then we've just announced MadWorld Europe for 2019. We're going to be in Dublin this time around, October 8th through the 11th. And so we've just announced the call for papers. It's going on now, and you have until January 11th to submit your presentation ideas for Dublin next year. So we'll certainly look forward to seeing all of those come in if you're interested in submitting. And it looks like we do have some questions coming in, so let's take a look. There was one that came up a couple times, which was a great question that I'll start with. The question was, does it work in both top nav and side nav? I'm not sure if that was an option for you, Eloise, when you tested, but I'm curious if you tested that in the side nav output too.
I must confess I have not tested that. We stick with Top Nav for our outputs. I cannot think of anything immediately that would mean that it wouldn't work. So like I say, it's all just kind of working on div sections within a topic. So I can't think of any immediate blockers, but I can't make any promises either because I haven't tested it.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think there's any reason that it wouldn't work in the side nav. The good news is when we send out the recording, we'll include a link to your sample project. So I'm sure you would agree, Eloise, it's probably just good to use it and test it out. Perhaps add a side nav skin, one of the template side nav skins that's in the Flare project for you, and just kind of play with it. But I would agree, I don't think there's anything that would prevent you from using side nav and incorporating these wizards. So if that's your skin preference, I think you'd have, you know, a lot of luck doing that. Another good question came in. Are the endpoints of the flowchart connecting to another topic, or is all of the text defined within the wizard topic?
Oh, that's a really good question. And I'm really glad you've asked that because it's reminded me of something that I didn't talk about that I promised that I would. So how we manage those kind of different user requirements and not kind of hiding too much of our content there. And this is how we manage it. So for our help items, we will tend to just give a really kind of brief summary and then put in a hyperlink off to the main topic or maybe a particular point within a topic that gives the user the help for their scenario. So definitely I would really encourage kind of linking off to other things just to make sure that your content is available to everybody and in as many kind of formats as possible.
Great. And you touched on this, but another question I thought was really great was, have you used this wizard with snippets?
No, we haven't, but I think that's a great idea. You certainly could. I can't think of anything that would stop you from doing that. And again, that would be a really good way to kind of manage having the content kind of available to everybody, but without obviously duplicating it.
Right. And then a couple questions came in about the JavaScript. Maybe you can expand a little bit on that. One question was, you know, who wrote the script, and maybe could you show a little bit what the script looks like in the Flare project? I know it will be it'll be in the project that everybody receives.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's fine. So that was written in-house, not by me. I'm not that technical, but we got one of our developers to help us write that. And if I pop back to the project, I can show you that now. So it's not hugely complicated. Like I say, it's just kind of toggling those elements on and off. That's what it looks like. Pretty
basic. That's good. And again, everybody will have access to this project to download, and you'll have access to this JavaScript too. Yeah. Another question came in. Can we make the link from a button be an actual separate help topic instead of another div in the wizard?
Oh, interesting. I confess I don't know. I've never tried it. I would have thought so, because you could just have an action on that button to
go to
essentially be a hyperlink.
Yeah,
I suppose it'd be a hyperlink style to the button. So yeah, I think you certainly could.
Yeah, I think that would work too. One question was, does the script have comments? I don't see them there, but if we go back to the JavaScript, I know we're kind of jumping around a little bit. But the one question was, you know, if the JavaScript has comments, but I'm not seeing that.
I mean, it doesn't, but it's not massive. So
right.
Hopefully that's it's not too much of a barrier. Like I say, I'm not an expert in the JavaScript, so I don't know whether you could look at that and understand it immediately, or whether you would need a bit of help with it.
Right. Maybe one last question here before we wrap, in case anybody has some others coming in. Is the wizard a separate project that one builds or can build into this TOC? Can it be triggered from inside a project topic, if that's clear.
I think so. It may be that I've not quite understood this right, but it is literally just another topic within your project. So we've got quite a big project with all of our help content in, and kind of 99% of that is normal, if you like, topics, and then we've just got our wizard topics in there. It's all one build, one process, so it's just sitting there alongside all of our other content. And if I show you the example, which is here, you can see, so this bit here that isn't shaded, that's in the topic, and that's not within that wizard wrapper at all, so that can just again be normal text, and that's static, so it doesn't matter what people click here, that will always remain. So if I show you that in here, you can see here it's just a normal H1 and a P, completely outside of any of those divs. That's just straight in our body.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I just want to remind everybody that the topic template and all these resources that Eloise is showing you will be made available to you. So it'll be downloadable. You can freely use it on your own and try it and experiment. So they will certainly be coming your way very shortly. So don't worry about writing these things down really feverishly. We'll be sending everybody a link. We've been getting lots of great feedback, Eloise. I think you've got everybody's creative wheels turning really, really quickly after all of this, and I can sense that everybody's going to be going back and trying this on their own. So
Brilliant.
yeah, so we really appreciate you taking the time. I want to thank everybody for joining. I certainly got a lot out of it. I know you all did too. We're getting some great comments coming in, so thanks for joining. This is, I guess that's our last webinar for 2018. So from all of us here at MadCap, we just want to wish everybody a very happy holiday season and a productive start to 2019. So we appreciate all of your support over the years and in participating in the webinar. And so Eloise, thanks for signing off the year with such a great presentation. So thank you so much. And
thank you very much.
Happy holidays. And thanks everybody. And we'll see you on the next one in the new year. Take care, everyone.